It is down, nobody. I am my international Bytown hater, and I am here today to talk to you about the Ottawa Charge win. The Ottawa Charge win. 2-1 over the Boston Fleet. Firstly, St. Louis, you're welcome. A good game. Finally, Ottawa actually, the game against Toronto was a good, worthwhile, exciting game. They had some games that were stinkers in the takeover tour. This game was not a stinker. It was exciting right to the end, no matter who you were cheering for. This was a fun game to watch, even if the scoring was rather low. It wasn't a game where there was no action, where nothing was happening. It was like edge of your seat entertainment. I would have liked, maybe a few more fans, but over 8,000 is still great. I'm not going to complain. That's great. I think it just is a testament to the fact that Ottawa has the best fans in the league, where I'm like, 8,000, like, we just get that. Yeah, Ottawa, the best fans in the league. Yeah, they get like 8,000 on every Saturday night. So, when they had a similar takeover tour, where it was the Canadian Tire Center, and it was over 11,000 with very short notice. I think if they were to do a well-advertised game at the Canadian Tire Center on a Saturday, for example, that would have the ability to sell out. I do think that the Ottawa Charge could sell at the Canadian Tire Center if given the proper opportunity. Yes, they were technically given the opportunity, but if anything, it's a testament to the fan base that they have in Ottawa, that 11,000 people still showed up on, let's be honest, relatively short notice. But St. Louis still showed up. St. Louis, Missouri is not often considered a hockey town, so for them to show up in numbers of over 8,000 is still beyond impressive. Every takeover tour game, 8,000 or more, that's great. That is wonderful for the game, and it was a great takeover tour. Obviously, some games more impressive than others. Vancouver, eat your heart out. But even the bad takeover tour games still had a lot of fans, and it's very encouraging. Especially that expansion does seem to be on the horizon, according to a few sources. It's good to see the game and the league growing. That's what you want to see in the early stages, that fan interest is still high. Interest from other cities is still high. You've had a few cities chanting, "We want a team. We want a team." That's really good and encouraging to see. But what did St. Louis actually get? Well, in the first period, they kind of got the Ottawa special. Penalties. Right out the gate, within 6 minutes, Ottawa takes another penalty, puts Boston on the power play. Pretty good power play, but I thought the kill was good for Ottawa. I think Ottawa got a pretty good kill off. And, they got a good kill off. But then Ottawa, in their own end, does what Ottawa does best. Poorly placed pass to absolutely no one. Tapani wide open in open ice. She snipes it, and Boston takes the lead 1-0. She snipes it, and Boston takes the lead 1-0. Did Ottawa learn their lesson? No. They take 2 more penalties to round out the first period. I thought that 5-on-5, Ottawa and Boston were kind of evenly matched. I thought that Ottawa was doing pretty good. And the first period felt like it was in Boston's favor, thanks to an obscene amount of penalties that did not need to be taken that were taken. So, but that's Ottawa. That's Ottawa for you. Ottawa and Boston, you went into this game, and I'm surprised we had any 5-on-5 time. These are the 2 most penalized teams in the league. The second period went by without incident. That is unbelievable. Both teams average over 7 minutes a night in the box. And somehow we had a full 20-minute period where nobody went to the penalty box. Both teams should be patting themselves on the back for that one, because, wow. The second period was a good period. I thought that this game, it was the goaltenders who were the most impressive players on the ice. They both had to face lots of shots, lots of good chances. They played really well. That's to be expected when these teams play. Ottawa's a very low-scoring team. They don't typically win games with a massive amount of goals. They do on occasion, but it's not typical. Typically, if Ottawa's going to win a game, they're going to win it off of goaltending and strong defense. And Gwen Phillips, to her credit, played an amazing game. And the one goal that got scored on her, you cannot put that on her. You can put it on the fact that, the Ottawa Charge assisted a goal against. Let's be honest. And this is not the first time it's happened. Where it's honestly a pass. Like it's hard to even call that a takeaway or an interception. Like, who was it going to? It was going right to Tapani, who had nothing but a free way to score a goal. Second period, I thought both teams had good chances. I thought it was good. I thought it was riveting. And going into the third, I thought that it was going to be interesting, but I also thought, if Boston just plays their game, they're going to win. And Ottawa, we need to find a way to do something. Ottawa would need to find a way to mess up our game because we're doing so well. And even though it's a tight game, I felt that Boston just was like this much better. Classic story with Ottawa, right? They play a good game, but not quite good enough. They play well, but not quite well enough. There's always that one goal that they just didn't get that the other team did. There was always that one mistake that Ottawa made that the other team doesn't. And I had a feeling this might be that kind of game. They play well in the third. They maybe get a few chances, but Boston closes it out, gets an empty netter, or Boston gets another goal. So then, even if Ottawa scores, it's kind of too little, too late at that point. That was what I was worried, especially being that it was a takeover tour game. I've seen that story play out before, and what happens? Stop after stop, nothing going. I thought Ottawa had a much better third period than Boston, in my opinion. Ottawa had a chance to tie it late with a Gabby Hughes break that looked like it was a sure thing, and it was one of the most beautiful saves I've ever seen. I can't even be mad at it. Why would I be mad at it? I was so happy to see what an awesome save against Ottawa. You love to see it. So great. And with less than 4 to go, Boston's still up 1, and then the puck goes to who else? Teresa Vanishova, who snipes it 1-1, less than 4 minutes. We got a tie game, baby. She snipes it. It's 1-1. We got a tie game, baby. But wait. Challenge. Coach's challenge for high sticking on the play. This changes everything, especially deflating moments like this. Goals getting called back like this is kryptonite for Ottawa. Ottawa is the type of team where adversity is like the worst for them. A goal getting called back, challenging a goal against and it not being upheld, anything like that, a bad penalty call that leads to a goal, things like that typically don't bode well with Ottawa. Typically something like that will just break. There's some sort of block or moment where just it completely takes all the wind out of their sails. If this gets called back, even though, yes, there's a little less than 4 to go, so that's still time to score, you kind of get the sense that this would probably be a turning point. Be a point where it's like, you had it, you got back in, and then it was ripped away from you. The wind is out of your sails. Empty net, and Boston can clean it up nice and even, put this game away with 2 minutes to go. But upon the review, let's be honest, it was not high sticking. Anyone who says it's high sticking, I'm sorry, but you're wrong. Come on. In what world is that high sticking? We scored. That was definitely a high stick, and I'm super angry about the call, and it was wrong, and they cost us the game. That should have been a high stick, and it was the wrong call. Or at the very least, we shouldn't have had the coach's challenge because it was a bad penalty to take. But yeah, the call on the ice stands. And it is a 1-1 game. And Ottawa gets to go on the power play. Now, they haven't had the most elite power play in the league, but all you need is that one chance. And there's a scramble in front of the net, scramble in front of the net. Again, this is something that Ottawa's not good with. You know, the puck is on anyone's stick. The goaltender's out of position 99% of the time. The puck will go to the team that Ottawa's playing against. It'll get to a Boston player before an Ottawa player, and it'll get cleared, and it'll be one of those, so close opportunities, one of those missed chances that when Ottawa loses in overtime, they'll look back at it and say, oh, we could have won it there. But that's not what happens. Because for the second time in about 30 seconds, Vanishova scores, and Ottawa takes the 2-1 lead with a little under 3.5 to go. I mean, Vanishova scores, and Ottawa takes a 2-1 lead with just under 3.5 to go. And yeah, just like that, in 30 seconds, it goes from a 1-goal deficit to a 1-goal lead. And who is it from? Who? Vanishova. I'm sorry, she needs to be in the MVP conversation. I'm not saying she needs to win. Honestly, I think it's Poulin. I think everyone, no matter what team you cheer for, has to admit, Poulin's winning. The question is, who are the other two nominees going to be? I haven't heard Vanishova's name even in the conversation a lot, and it should be. Tied for second in scoring. You know who hasn't had 2 Hatties this year? Poulin. But Vanishova has. And a bunch of multi-goal games. When Vanishova gets going, the Charge tend to get going. Okay, this is going to be a really hot take. I'd argue that Vanishova is MVP in the sense of no team would be worse off than Ottawa without Vanishova. You take Poulin out of Montreal, I still think that they're a playoff team. I still think that they're a threat. I think that they are far less of a threat. I think that they are not nearly as good of a team as they are with Poulin. But you take Poulin out of Montreal, if she had to, take a week off, she had to take the rest of the season off until the playoffs. A, they've already clinched. But B, I think they'd still finish first. Honestly, if it's game 5 and Poulin is out, I'm not going to write Montreal off. I'm not going to say, oh, well, this game's over. I'm going to say, well, they still have Stacey. If Desbiens and Stacey are both healthy, they're good. They're going to be okay. It's going to be harder without Poulin, but it's not going to be impossible. You take Vanishova out. Seriously, take Vanishova out of Ottawa. Where are the goals going to come from? Phillips and Maschmeyer, they can only do so much. Can't exactly score. Clark and Hughes, yeah, they're good. They can score. But Vanishova is far and away the best scorer on the Ottawa Charge. And you take her out of the Ottawa Charge, and they are a very different team, a much weaker team. And when they're a team that is fighting for their lives in the playoff race, that's where I'm like, they're worse than New York. They're worse than New York without Vanishova. You take Vanishova away, I think the Charge are the worst team in the league, honestly. I think that Vanishova has, at times, taken the team on her back and willed her teams to win games that they otherwise would have lost. This being an example. In 30 seconds, Vanishova goes from a 1-goal deficit to scoring 2 goals and giving the Charge the tying and winning goal with under 4 minutes to play. That is elite. That is super clutch. And yes, there are, arguably other players that are more valuable to their team, but To say that Vanishova isn't in that conversation is absurd, and to say that, she doesn't belong in that conversation, that she isn't one of the most valuable players to her team, I think she is at least in the top 3 of most valuable players to their team and deserves a nomination. That's my 2 cents. And yeah, Ottawa takes a 2-1 lead, but they give St. Louis a little bit more of their money's worth, because what do? They take a penalty at the end of the game. They had, I believe, 6 penalties or 5 or 6 penalties. The third period had a lot of penalties. One of them obviously being a coach's challenge that ultimately cost Boston the game. So we love to see that. I mean, we hate to see that. Shucks. And yeah, so Boston has a power play to finish off the game. And you know what? Credit where credit is due. It was scary at times, but Ottawa held them off. The final seconds ticked off. Ottawa won. Now, this win would have been way more impactful if Minnesota then proceeded to lose to Toronto. Toronto did Toronto things and did not win the game that would benefit Ottawa, because when has Toronto ever done that? Minnesota does still hold the final playoff spot. Ottawa had that for all of less than a day. But Ottawa has a game in hand. Now, I said at the Minnesota series, you got to win both. They didn't. They split. The New York City's got to win both. They didn't. They split. In the Boston series, I said you just need to win one. Honestly, I think even if they lose the next game, the Chargers still in an okay spot. Yes, down 2 points with 3 games to go in the season isn't the best. But you face Minnesota. The Charge and the Frost, they have a game. So if they match each other's records, it'll come down to whoever wins that game. I genuinely do think that's what it could come down to. That it could come down to whoever wins that last game of the season will make, or not that second last game of the season, will make the playoffs. No guarantees, but I got a feeling. I got a gut feeling. If Ottawa wins against Boston in their next meeting, however, it does put the heat on Minnesota a little bit more, because in as many games, Ottawa has a chance to be ahead of Minnesota. A win of any sort gives Ottawa the tiebreaker and puts Ottawa in a position to close it out in a slightly easier path than Minnesota. If they have a 1-point lead, that's even more of a cushion. They could just beat Minnesota and get a win, and they'd be good. So it's like not, complete doom and gloom for Ottawa, which I hate. I was so happy that Minnesota won, because that was great, and I love to see that. And oh man, if Ottawa makes the playoffs, I'd be angry. Urgh. But yeah, this was needed for Ottawa for a few reasons. Obviously, the collapse against New York is detrimental to everything. To the belief that this team can do anything, that this team can close out a tight game, or can close out a big lead, or can close out anything, really. It's detrimental to the belief that they can do anything, when it comes to making the playoffs and doing something in the playoffs. To follow that up with a win like this is exactly what they needed. A game where they didn't get much of anything going for most of the game, to very, very late, like less than 4 minutes to go, after getting stopped time and time and time again, which has been a theme for the Charge, for them to get going, get 2 goals in quick succession late in the game by a big-time player in the clutchest of moments, is the type of thing that translates well into the postseason. I think Vanishova would be a great player for Ottawa in the playoffs, because she's the type of player who I think would elevate her game in those big moments. There are some players where you're worried they would shy away from the spotlight, and there are other players like Vanishova where the spotlight is where they are playing at their best. And I felt the Charge have struggled playing in the spotlight. There are some players, however, who are good at that. And they have one more game before the IHF break. And hopefully some players who maybe haven't played super well in the spotlight can be reminded how good they can be. Lots of players going to the IIHF tournament who we've seen in the past play elite. So it's not that they aren't competitive. And I've said it before, I feel like there's maybe a culture issue in the locker room, for the Charge. But these are players where the right voice can get them to tap into that part of them that is competitive. You look at most of the players on the Charge, you look at when they've played outside of the Charge, they have that competitive edge. They have that upper echelon. Watch Jenner and Clark and Mashmeyer play against the U.S. and tell me that they aren't capable of it. They are capable. I think Clark and Mashmeyer have proved themselves this season. But even still, they're capable of really hitting that upper echelon. Give them that spotlight now, and then they could translate that to the rest of the season and try and make a playoff spot. Which, again, I'd be so frustrated with. So that's all for this video. And as always, go other team, go. Okay, I really need a cold shower. Look at me.